My friends, I need to tell you something that will change everything you thought you knew about life. You've been playing the game all wrong, not because you're not trying hard enough, not because you don't deserve to win, but because nobody ever told you the actual rules. For 30 years, I stood before audiences in New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, and I watched thousands of people struggle with the same problem. They were playing life like it was a game of chance, waiting for lucky breaks, hoping circumstances would change, praying for someone else to make the first move. But I tell you now, life is not a game of chance. It is a game of consciousness. And the moment you understand this, you stop being a player hoping to win, and you become the one who decides the outcome before the game even begins. When I was 38 years old, serving in the United States Army, my commanding officer, Colonel Theodore Bilbao Jr., denied my application for honorable discharge. He signed it disapproved with absolute finality. I had no appeal beyond him. By all external rules of the game, I was stuck. Yet 9 days later, that same colonel called me into his office and honorably discharged me. Not because I argued with him, not because I found some loophole, but because I learned to play by the real rules, the rules that govern reality itself. The rules I'm about to share with you are not theories. They are not wishful thinking. They are the actual mechanics of how consciousness creates your world. And once you see them, you cannot unsee them. The game you think you're playing, it doesn't exist. But the game you're actually playing, you've been winning it your entire life. You just didn't know you were playing. Section 1, why you've been losing. Let me tell you why most people lose the game of life before they even start playing. They believe the game is out there. They think the playing field is the external world, the economy, other people's decisions, timing, luck, circumstances. They believe they must wait for the dice to roll in their favor. But this is the fundamental error. The game is not happening out there. The game is happening in here, in your consciousness. Your consciousness is not watching the game. Your consciousness is the game board, the dice, the rules, and the outcome. What you assume to be true in consciousness becomes your experience in what you call reality. Most people have this completely backward. They wait for conditions to change, and then they will change how they feel. They say, when I have money, then I'll feel wealthy. When I find love, then I'll feel loved. When I get the job, then I'll feel successful. But I tell you, you will never have what you are not first willing to assume you already are. This is what I discovered that night in the army barracks. My colonel had denied my discharge. By all external measures, the game was over. I had lost. But I understood something the colonel did not. The game doesn't end when circumstances say no. The game ends when consciousness says yes. That night, I lay in my bunk, surrounded by other soldiers, and I dared to assume something impossible. I assumed I was already home in New York City, honorably discharged, sleeping in my own apartment. I didn't wish for it. I didn't hope for it. I didn't pray for it. I assumed it as a present fact. I walked through my apartment in imagination. I touched familiar objects. I felt the reality of being home, not on furlough, not as a visitor, but as a civilian, permanently free from the army. I made that assumption so real, so vivid, so natural, that I fell asleep in that state. At 4:15 that morning, I had a vision. A large white document appeared before me, the same document the colonel had signed, disapproved. Then a hand appeared holding a pen. The pen scratched out disapproved and wrote approved in bold script. And a voice said to me, that which I have done, I have done. Do nothing. 9 days later, not 9 months, not 9 years, but 9 days, Colonel Theodore Bilbao Jr. called me into his office and honorably discharged me. The same man who had told me no now told me yes. Nothing in the external circumstances had changed, except my assumption. Do you see what happened? I changed the game board by changing my consciousness. The colonel didn't change his mind, I changed mine. And when my mind changed, the world rearranged itself to match my assumption. This is the foundation of the game. Your assumptions create your reality. Not your wishes, not your hopes, your assumptions. What you assume to be true, to the degree that you are self-persuaded, must manifest in your world. This is not magic. This is mechanics. This is law. Most people spend their entire lives wishing and hoping and praying, but they never assume. They say, I want to be wealthy, but they assume they are poor. They say, I want to find love, but they assume they are alone. They say, I want to be successful, but they assume they are failures. And the game, being perfectly fair, gives them exactly what they assume. You are not losing the game because you're unlucky. You're losing because you're playing by the wrong rules. You've been taught that reality creates consciousness, that you feel wealthy because you have money, that you feel loved because someone loves you. But I tell you the truth, consciousness creates reality. You have money because you assumed wealth. Someone loves you because you assumed love. The game is rigged in your favor. You just have to stop playing by the rules you were taught and start playing by the rules that actually govern reality. Before I share with you the specific rules that will change your game completely, I want to give you something practical right now. If you ever tried to assume your desire fulfilled, but it felt fake, forced, or hollow, you're not alone. This is the most common struggle I see. There's a guide called the Manifest Reset. 5 simple shifts that help you feel it real even when it feels impossible. These aren't theories. They're practical techniques you can use the moment you feel stuck. Simply comment reset below and you'll receive the Manifest Reset guide immediately. Now, let me teach you the exact rules of this game. Section 2, the real rules of the game. Now let me teach you the rules nobody told you. The rules I learned from a man named Abdullah, a mystic, who understood this game better than anyone I ever met. Rule number 1, I am is your character name. In this game of life, you are constantly naming yourself. Every time you say I am, you are selecting your character class. I am is the name of God. It is the creative power dwelling in you. And whatever you place after I am becomes your experience. Most people use this power unconsciously. They say, I am broke, I am lonely, I am stuck, I am unlucky, I am not good enough. And the game, being perfectly responsive, says, yes, you are. Let me show you more evidence of what you just claimed. But when you consciously claim, I am wealthy, I am loved, I am free, when you assume these states and persist in them, reality must conform. I watched this happen with my own eyes. A woman came to me during my lectures in San Francisco. She stood before approximately 1,000 people and said, my brother is in the army. I don't know what he did, but I know he has been court-martialed and sentenced to 6 months of hard labor. Neville, if I believe you, can I not set my brother free? I replied, yes, but only to the degree that you are self-persuaded that he is free. 1 week later, this same woman stood before the audience again and told her story, believing you last week. When I returned home to my second-floor apartment, I sat in my living room and imagined I heard the doorbell ring. Then I ran down the stairs, opened the front door, and threw my arms around my brother. I rehearsed that scene over and over until I could hear the doorbell ring, feel the banister in my right hand, and feel my feet moving down the stairs. The doorknob became solidly real in my hand, and I could see, touch, and feel my brother's presence. She concluded, last Wednesday evening, as I was dwelling upon my brother's return, the doorbell rang, and I instantly knew it was he. I ran down the stairs, opened the door, and there was my brother. He told me that the army had reviewed his case and changed their judgment, setting him free with an honorable discharge. Do you see? She changed her brother's character by changing her own assumption. She assumed he was free, and reality rearranged itself to match her consciousness. Rule number 2, live from the win, not toward it. This is where most players lose the game. They imagine themselves getting what they want. They see themselves working toward it, moving toward it, hoping for it. But this keeps them perpetually in the state of wanting, not having. I teach you instead to live in the end, to psychologically move to the end of your desire and live there now. When I wanted to go to Barbados but had no money, I didn't imagine myself trying to get money for the trip. I didn't visualize applying for loans or asking for help. Instead, I went to my teacher Abdullah and told him I wanted to go to Barbados. Do you know what he said to me? He looked at me and said, "You are in Barbados." I was standing in his apartment at 30 West 72nd Street in New York City. I said, "Ab, I'm standing right here. I'm not in Barbados." He said nothing. He simply closed the door in my face. I went back the next day and said, "Ab, I am no nearer to Barbados than I was yesterday." Again he said, "You are in Barbados." And again he closed the door. He was teaching me a rule of the game. Do not imagine the journey. Assume the arrival. So I began to sleep each night assuming I was in Barbados. Not going to Barbados, not hoping to go to Barbados, but already in Barbados, sleeping in the room I knew in my father's house. Within days, my brother in Barbados, whom I had not seen in years, sent me a letter with a steamship ticket and $50. When I went to the steamship office, they told me they only had third-class passage available. I went back to Abdullah and told him. Do you know what he said? "Who told you you're going third class? You went first class." He didn't say you will go first class. He said you went first class. Past tense. As if it had already happened. The morning the ship sailed, the ticket agent said to me, "Mr. Goddard, I have good news. We have a cancellation. You can now go first class." Abdullah knew the game. He knew that when you live in the end, when you assume the wish fulfilled as a present fact, the entire world must rearrange itself to match your assumption. Rule number 3, assumption hardens into fact. This is the master rule, the rule that governs all others. What you assume to be true becomes true. Not what you wish, not what you hope, not what you want, what you assume. And the degree of manifestation depends on the degree of your self-persuasion. To the degree that you convince yourself it is true, it must become true. Let me share with you one of the most powerful examples of this principle I've ever witnessed. A woman wrote to me about her desperate situation. She was 55 years old, unemployed, no family to support her, behind in her rent, her bank account nearly empty, her car falling apart. She needed practically everything, and she had nowhere to turn. She had been attending my lectures for almost a year, and in her desperation, she decided to test what I taught. She had nothing left to lose. At first, she tried to imagine every single thing she needed: a new car, money for rent, proper clothes for job interviews, a decent job. But the list was so long and so overwhelming that by the time she finished imagining it all, she was exhausted and couldn't sleep. Then she remembered something I had taught. Instead of imagining every single item, she decided to capture one feeling, the feeling that something wonderful was happening to her right now. Not tomorrow, not next week, but now. Every night as she fell asleep, she would say to herself, "Isn't it wonderful? Something marvelous is happening to me now." And she would feel the way she would expect to feel if something wonderful really was happening. She didn't strain. She didn't force. She simply assumed the feeling of the wish fulfilled and let it saturate her consciousness as she drifted off to sleep. She did this every single night for 2 months. Then one day, in early October, she ran into a casual friend she hadn't seen in months. They chatted briefly about New York City, where this woman had lived many years ago. Just small talk, nothing significant. But that brief conversation triggered something. The friend went home and mentioned to his wife that he'd seen this woman. The wife said, "Oh, I haven't thought of her in years. You know, my aunt in New York is looking for a companion, someone mature, responsible, someone she can trust." Within days, this woman received a phone call. Would she be willing to move to New York to be a companion to an elderly woman? Room, board, salary, and travel expenses all provided. She accepted. And when she arrived in New York, she discovered that this elderly woman was not just wealthy, she was extraordinarily generous. She gave her beautiful clothes, took her to fine restaurants, traveled with her to Europe, and when the elderly woman passed away 2 years later, she left this woman a substantial inheritance. All of this came from one assumption: something wonderful is happening to me now. Do you see how the game works? She didn't imagine the specific solution. She didn't know how it would happen. She simply assumed the state of the wish fulfilled. And reality arranged all the players, all the circumstances, all the coincidences to match her assumption. This is the game. Assume the state. Let the state create the facts. Rule number 4, consciousness doesn't obey space or time. Now, I'm going to tell you something that will seem impossible, but I know it to be true because I have experienced it myself. In this game of consciousness, space and time are not limitations. They are illusions. When my 17-year-old nephew Billy was dying of cancer in Barbados, I was in New York City, over 2,000 miles away. My nephew was staying in my father's bedroom in our family home. One night, I decided to test the nature of consciousness. I lay down in my apartment and imagined myself projecting into my father's bedroom in Barbados. I assumed I was actually on that bed, in that room, occupying the same space as my nephew. I made it so real that I fell asleep in that assumption. 8 days later, this was before airmail, so letters came by slow freight, I received a letter from my sister Daphne. She had dated the letter the exact day I had done what I just described. She wrote, "Neville, I don't understand it. I went to the room to see Billy. As I entered the room, it was you. I looked at what should be Billy, and I am looking at you. I rubbed my eyes. I did everything to bring about normal vision, but I couldn't see my son Bill. I could only see my brother Neville. My sister actually saw me, physically saw me, in a room 2,000 miles away on the exact night I assumed I was there." You see, consciousness doesn't require a body to travel. Consciousness is everywhere. When you assume you are somewhere, you are there in consciousness. And consciousness is the only reality. This is an advanced rule of the game. Where you are in consciousness is where you are, regardless of where your body appears to be. Section 3, advanced gameplay. Now that you understand the basic rules, let me teach you some advanced strategies. Strategy number 1, revision. The ability to replay any level. Most players don't know this, but the game has a replay function. You can go back and change any moment that didn't go the way you wanted. This is what I call revision. If something happened today that you didn't like, if you had a conversation that went wrong, if you received bad news, if someone treated you poorly, you don't have to accept it as final. Tonight, before you sleep, replay that scene in your imagination. But this time, imagine it going the way you wish it had gone. Hear the conversation differently. See yourself receiving good news instead. Experience the person treating you kindly. Make the revised scene so real that it feels more real than what actually happened. What you're doing is changing the past in consciousness. And since consciousness is the only reality, you've actually changed the past. I know this sounds impossible, but I've seen it work thousands of times. People revise arguments, and the next day the other person apologizes without knowing why. They revise rejections, and new opportunities appear. They revise failures, and suddenly circumstances shift. The game doesn't have a fixed timeline. Time is just another player in the game of consciousness, and consciousness can rearrange it however it chooses. Strategy number 2, persistence wins every time. Here's what most players do wrong. They assume their wish fulfilled once or twice, and when it doesn't manifest immediately, they give up. They say, "I tried it and it didn't work." But the game requires persistence. When I wanted out of the army, I didn't imagine it once. I imagined being home in New York City every single night until it became more real to me than the barracks I was sleeping in. When that woman wanted to be free from her desperate situation, she didn't say, "Isn't it wonderful," one time. She said it every night for 2 months until it saturated her consciousness. The game rewards persistence. Why? Because persistence is proof of your assumption. If you assume something is true, you don't need to keep checking if it's coming. You simply live from it until it hardens into fact. To the degree that you are self-persuaded, it is done. If you have to keep asking, when will it happen, or is it working, you haven't persuaded yourself. You're still playing from the state of wanting, not having. But when you're truly self-persuaded, you rest. You live from the end. You go about your life with quiet knowing, and one day you turn around and discover that your assumption has become fact. Strategy number 3, play multiple characters simultaneously. Here's an advanced technique that most players never discover. You can assume multiple wishes fulfilled at the same time. You don't have to wait for one desire to manifest before assuming another. You can be wealthy and healthy and loved and successful all at once in consciousness. The only limitation is your ability to maintain those assumptions without contradicting yourself. My brother Victor in Barbados understood this perfectly. He had a vision. I will be the biggest, the most powerful financial giant in the island. And he never deviated from that assumption. When there were riots, when buildings burned, when cane fields were destroyed, he remained faithful to his vision. He became exactly what he assumed he would be. He paid higher and higher dividends year after year. He succeeded because he never played the victim. He never assumed lack. He played the character he chose, and the game gave him the role he assumed. You can do the same. You can simultaneously be the person who has financial abundance, perfect health, loving relationships, and creative success. The game has no rule that says you can only win one victory at a time. The only question is, can you maintain those assumptions? Can you be self-persuaded of multiple fulfilled desires simultaneously? If you can, the game will give you everything you assume. Section 4, the ultimate win condition. Now let me tell you the ultimate secret of this game, the win condition that changes everything. You cannot lose. You see, most people think the game is about accumulating things, money, success, relationships, possessions. They think winning means having more than others, achieving more than others, being more than others. But that's not the real game. The real game is this: discovering that you are not the character. You are the player. You are consciousness itself. Every character you play, rich or poor, sick or healthy, loved or lonely, is just a role. And you, as consciousness, are free to play any role you choose. When you discover this, you realize something extraordinary. You've been playing a single-player game all along. There is no opponent. There's only you, exploring what it's like to be different characters, experience different states, play different roles. Everyone you meet, every person who helps you or hinders you, praises you or criticizes you, is consciousness playing another character. It's all you. It's all consciousness experiencing itself through infinite variations. This doesn't mean you become passive. Far from it. When you know you're playing a game, you can play it with tremendous skill and enthusiasm. You can care deeply about your moves while not being devastated if they don't work out perfectly. You can assume wealth and enjoy wealth. You can assume love and experience love. You can assume success and achieve success, but you're no longer desperate. You're no longer afraid, because you know that whatever happens, you, consciousness, cannot be diminished. You're simply experiencing one state or another, one role or another, one game or another. The woman whose brother was freed from the military, she didn't just win that game. She discovered she was the game master. She realized her consciousness could override military law, military decisions, military authority. The woman who manifested abundance from complete destitution, she didn't just acquire things, she discovered that consciousness creates circumstances, not the other way around. I didn't just get discharged from the army. I discovered that my assumption could override my colonel's decision, military regulations, and all external authority. This is the ultimate win, realizing you are the operant power. You are the one who decides how the game goes. And when you truly know this, when you're not just believing it intellectually, but experiencing it, you stop playing the game desperately. You start playing it masterfully. You assume your desires as present facts. You live in the end. You persist in your assumption. You revise what needs revising. And you watch as the entire world rearranges itself to match your consciousness. This is winning. Not once, but continuously. not by accident, but by design, not by luck, but by law. If what I've shared today resonates with you, I want you to take action right now. If you haven't already, remember the Manifest Reset Guide I mentioned earlier. Reset number 1 shows you how to stop forcing the feeling. Reset number 2 helps you shift from seeking to having. Reset number 3, about letting go without giving up, has helped more people break through resistance than any other technique. Comment reset below to receive the Manifest Reset Guide with all 5 practical shifts. So now you know the rules. Now you understand the game. Life is not happening to you. Life is happening from you. Your consciousness is not observing reality. Your consciousness is creating it. Every assumption you make is a move in the game. Every state you dwell in is a character you're playing. Every belief you hold is a rule you're following. The question is, are you playing consciously or unconsciously? Are you assuming what you want or what you fear? Are you living in the end or perpetually moving toward it? I spent 30 years teaching these principles because I discovered something extraordinary. This actually works. Not sometimes, not for some people, always, for everyone. Because it's not a technique, it's the law of how consciousness creates reality. The woman who freed her brother from military prison used this law. The woman who manifested abundance from poverty used this law. I used this law to be discharged from the army in 9 days. My brother used this law to become a financial giant. And you can use it right now. Tonight, before you sleep, assume your desire is already fulfilled. Don't imagine getting it. Imagine having it. Live in the end. Make it so real that you fall asleep in that assumption. And then persist. Do it tomorrow night. And the next night. And the next. Persist until it becomes more real to you than your current circumstances. Because I tell you, assumption hardens into fact. What you assume in consciousness must become fact in experience. This is law. You are not a victim of circumstances. You are not at the mercy of the economy, other people's decisions, or random chance. You are consciousness. You are the player. You are the operant power. And now that you know the rules, you can finally win the game, not just once, but every single time you play. Go now and assume the state of your wish fulfilled. Live in the end. Persist in your assumption. And watch as the entire world, including the people who said no, the circumstances that seemed impossible, the odds that seemed against you, watch as everything rearranges itself to match your consciousness. This is not wishful thinking. This is not positive thinking. This is the mechanics of reality itself. Now you know how to win. The only question is, will you play? Now, if you want to go even deeper into the principles I've taught you today, I have something special prepared for you. My teacher Abdullah revealed to me a wealth secret that most people will never discover, a secret about consciousness and prosperity that transforms how money flows to you. That teaching is appearing on your screen right now. I encourage you to watch it next, because when you understand what Abdullah taught me about wealth, you will never struggle with money again.